My guest today is Linda Krockenberger. She is someone who's moved from hospitality and actually working with theme parks, and it's an area I want to touch on with her. But she's now working with camels. Now, being in Dubai, it's something that we see quite regularly, but working with them, doing treks, racing camels, that was something completely new for me. So I'm interested to have this conversation today and explore the changes that Linda has made in her life and what started it all. Linda, thank you for joining me today. I've done that quick introduction, but help me understand theme parks and hospitality to camels.
Thank you so much for this introduction. And I can understand why that might raise questions that someone would consider camels even as a career or a deviation from a career that was going fairly well, I would say. But yeah, there's a few I guess moments that coincided that eventually led to such a drastic switch. So yes, as you rightly said, I was working here in Dubai. I came to the UAE to chase my hospitality career. It was obviously, it's a very dynamic country, and all the regional offices are here. So to climb that corporate ladder, I felt like that's a really good starting point to be here, and it was really fun. I loved the dynamics and the theme parks and the volume of tourists also that this country receives, and the diversity in the workplace. And at the same time, maybe because of this intensity, I was still looking for, breakaway during the weekend, at least, to get my, fair share of peace and quiet out in the desert. First in a Jeep, off-roading, and then even that was too fast for me. So I thought I need to slow that down a little more. And that's when I did some research and came across a camel track that is hosted in this country. And I thought, exactly, that is what I need. And I set my mind to it. And I'm very stubborn, I think, or people tell me sometimes, which can be a good thing if, in a sense of, if I set my mind to it, it often turns out that one way or another, not maybe at the exact time that I thought, but eventually I feel like things turn into reality. So I set my mind on this camel track, and then I knew that I was prepared to potentially lose or take a career break to be able to attend. And from this 2 weeks track in December, which was 2019, that break became a little longer than I initially planned, because COVID hit. And of course, we all know that it affected industries around the world, but specifically to travel or hospitality and travel. So 2020 was a bit of an industry standstill. And I knew that even if I go and apply for jobs, there aren't necessarily any. So I tried to actually lean into that break and say it's medicated, it's prescribed, we can't escape. And camels were a bit of a consistent element that just made me feel present in the moment and not get lost in worries about the future or even the present during that year.
Nice. So, and I guess then that's the starting process. You felt that freedom, that release being with the camels, having that time, slower pace, as that's what it sounds like. So how did that actually then transition into being your job, the new career, the focus for your day-to-day, rather than it just being the type of weekend activity?
Right. It's yeah, I ask myself sometimes too, how did that happen? Or how did you let that happen? But no, actually, I feel very grateful. That's something that I feel personally passionate about and that I enjoy. I am now able to share with others. And from a personal hobby, as you said, and as from being an escape, it turned into friends asking, what is it that drives you to connect with camels or be with camels, and can we try? Like, it seems like it means so much to you, and I feel like I need to see this for myself. So it was a bit of the circle around me that became intrigued, and I knew I didn't have a place to include them. And so that's when I started actively looking at opportunities to rather create a community, not so much of a business. I don't think that was my intention at all, because I didn't think it's viable to begin with. I thought, I mean, how will that ever be something that can sustain me personally? So searching for that farm, or that place where I could have my own personal, camel for myself, but also invite others to join me and explore that part of the UAE. That's how I was introduced to my now business partner, Abed Al Falasi. And while I was just, merely playing with the idea of creating a community at best, he felt like, no, this needs to be structured, and I'm going to go get a license for this, and we'll set it up properly. Like, he wasn't here to play. I guess he knew, he saw maybe a bit more the business vision from the beginning, that it needs a name, that it needs a license, that it should operate properly. And when I felt like, the first few months, I mean, it wasn't like we opened an account and a website, and then suddenly every day we had people coming through our doors. It was, days of nobody. And then with our 4 camels, sometimes somebody would ask on the weekend, and we would be 6, but we only had 4 camels. So it was a very fluctuating demand, if you want to say. And coming from hospitality and theme parks, I knew that it's a long way to go, but it needed the fact that we were on the same page from a business point of view with Abed and myself, to say like, okay, well, if we do it, let's do it properly. That's maybe where we then slowly started to build into growing this and wanting it to grow, right? Not just from a community, but also that it's viable. And then December 2022, so fast forward a little bit, is when I knew, or not December, just before actually, that this winter, so the last winter season, 2022-23, I wasn't able to give anymore 100% of the job that I eventually had to take up again, and 100% for this camel riding school, which is called ADCRC. So then I knew, now it's decision-making time. It's either or, because I personally need to be able to do it right. And if I'm working for someone, they pay me, a salary, I need to dedicate my full attention and return. And likewise, if I run the school, if it's supposed to go well, then it needed more time. So I went and I thought, what are the few aspects that give me the base to make that jump? And one important factor in this country is the visa. So I looked at options, how I can, make sure I have a visa and a right to stay. And I thought, I feel like I'm contributing to the certain elements of culture and so on. So let's try that golden visa, right? Which was available to specific industries and creators. And I thought, if they accept my application, then I know I have a foundation also from the visa security, and I'll quit my job. So that came through on my birthday, which was a quite nice touch. The application was approved, and then I said, let's do it, because it's now or never. It's a mindset where I thought, like, you never know if you don't try. And I think we have to sometimes redefine failure. So I thought, what's the worst that can happen? The worst was just behind us, which was COVID. In that, it was losing jobs, it was losing, livelihoods and stability, and we came through, and life and the world continued. So I thought, if that world can stop in that scale and still continue, then also Linda, this one tiny person, can go do camels for a while. And should it not work out, I'll come back, and I'll have employable skills. I'm going to be able to contribute in a form of employment if needed. So I thought that gave me the courage to free myself of the employment contract and dedicate it to the school, to this camel riding school.
Amazing. A couple of things I just want to touch on there and just, I guess, expand upon. So you managed to find another job, and so we're doing the school stuff in parallel with your free time. So you had the stability of a job. This is what it sounded like. And until you got to that tipping point, it's like, okay, now it's the now or never situation. I guess for the audience and the listeners, it's helpful for them to understand that you didn't necessarily go all in straight away, and therefore you felt like it was a massive risk. You were doing it in parallel and alongside having the stability of a traditional job until you got to that point where it's like, actually, now I can see there is an opportunity to move across. How long did that process take, and what were some of those challenges that you faced in terms of almost having this as that side project and trying to grow it and getting to that point where you had the decision to make?
Yes, it's you collected these points very correctly. So I did have to get a new job after COVID, obviously, because that school wasn't just like hit the ground running, right? And I think that's often what we might miss to see. Is we see, a startup, or we hear the news about that company once it's already doing well, but there was somebody, treading water for a very long time prior to that. So I once attended this little startup workshop, and someone said, my employer was my first investor. And it resonates with me, because I worked my due time at the company. And I was very efficient, because I knew I needed to get things done, because I have somewhere to go after work, which was the riding school, or I had to be somewhere before work and then come into work, do my deliver my deliverables at work, and so on. So it was I was very conscious of this fact that I have to give 100% when I'm there, but also be, how would I say this rightly, a bit strict to myself to not do the extra time. I mean, I used to be a person who easily stays after work and keeps working, and there's one more thing to do, another thing to prepare, because I liked my work. I generally love working and being productive. So staying longer wasn't really something I hated. It was fine. But when you have a side project, and I compare it to, maybe for someone it's a side project, a hobby, a sport, or a family, then you have to just tell yourself, now it's time to get out, because I need to be somewhere else too. So and I made that clear to the people at work, first a little bit more conservatively, but I didn't want to hide it. I said, look, I'm here to give my time, my effort, my dedication to work. But because it started being a little bit in the news as well, I said, at the same time, I'm working on this project, and it means a lot to me. So you should be aware, in a way, like that there's a certain time where you see me going home, and I think an employer shouldn't penalize someone to leave on time, right? It's and also company cultures need to understand that it's not a problem if you leave on time. It doesn't mean that I don't care about my job, or that I don't give what's required. But that there is time after work or before work that we can use quite efficiently to get stuff done for something else that can be the foundation. And then you, like you said, it reduces a certain risk to then let go of that day job, because then you're not just starting from zero. You have a base, you have something to build on and expand on. So, and I'm really happy that this was possible. I'm happy for the team at work to also be excited for me that I have this, I think, and we shouldn't hide it. Like something else I read once is lots of like C-suite members of a company, they would go speak on panels, they would go be on events, represent the company, maybe volunteer on another, not volunteer, work on another board or be on some sort of panel. So they all have sort of side jobs, right? they work on, they share their expertise elsewhere. They invest in communities as well. So you as that employee, you could do that too. I firmly believe that you can advocate for that without cutting into the, you being an employer dedicated to your job during the day.
Nice. And so that decision point of, moving across to the school, was that something you discussed with friends, with family? Was it just what, this is what Linda wants to do, I'm going to go for it? Talk me through that sort of that situation.
So there's definitely people who would have known or that I would talk about this, but at the same time I knew that I wanted to carry that decision by myself as well. I felt like in a way that it's a unique case. I mean, every case is unique in its own way, but I knew that the ones who I'm talking to might not be in the exact situation. So I didn't really expect them to fully understand sometimes, to be, why would you leave that nice paying job? And I was head of department. I loved really being in that position and having that authority. But at the same time, I knew that I felt like I said, if I didn't try, I'll never know. And I didn't want to miss that opportunity to fail almost, or the opportunity to succeed as well. And then in the end, then you can go back to yourself and say you tried. And that's what you needed to see how it plays out. But I have to say, family, friends, the ones who knew about the school, they really also encouraged me. Not to take risky decisions, but to basically tell me that yes, there is something there. It is a business. It is an initiative. It is a project, and it means something to people. And I think that was important too, to get a bit to sense check. It's not just me who's crazy about this idea, but that it became, a brand a little bit in a way, and them reconfirming that back to me made me also believe that it's true, not just some illusion that exists in my head.
Awesome. So you touched on that, I guess, the failure or the success, putting yourself in that position to grow something, and okay, you never know what's going to happen, but at least you are in a position to say, okay, I'm going to try, I'm going to gain the experience. That's what, the conversations that I have, a lot of the time, that's the thing that holds people back. It's like, oh, I want to do something. I can feel it inside that this is what I should be doing, but I'm reluctant because they view failure as a big negative thing. And one of my previous guests on the podcast actually said, he visited Silicon Valley tech world, and they were like, yeah, no, failure is fine. It means you've tried, which is more than a lot of people do. So I guess if we can reframe failure in that way, that it's a learning experience and it's an opportunity to see what we might be able to do, I guess it's trying to help people, like you did, make that decision that says, yes, I'm gonna go through with it. I'm gonna, move sideways into something else, because that could be my future. That's something that, I can potentially grow and develop and gain that experience. So great to hear your experience there. The next
thing
go on.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to relate to failure is also on what scale, on what measuring scale, right? So what is failure and defined by what, right? So, and it comes back to also decision making, right or wrong. Why do you even think there is a wrong decision? Because life is not going to, it's not like that little quiz in the magazine where you have to go through a labyrinth and find out, because, and even there you could go reverse. In any case, right and wrong decisions in life, I don't really think they exist in that way, because life isn't going, you can't go back. There is no reversal. It's just a different path. So now I'm here. It's irrelevant what would be the situation if I didn't quit, because I'm dealing with this new reality, and that's so that gave me trust too, to really tell myself you can't really choose wrong. You can just choose one, or you can choose to quit or not to quit, and your life will unfold differently. But it's never right or wrong. It's just a path that unfolds. So that's one thing. And also failure. If I'm now measuring myself, saying, back when I studied, I want to be head of revenue management, managing $100 million budget, and have a team of 5 reporting to me in a international hotel chain. And now I'm not there. Yes, maybe then I feel like I failed on that career trajectory, but it's just, I can't measure that. I don't think we should measure life based on that, right? It's I feel like I succeeded in delivering something to a community, to people, and enabling them in experiences. So I focus on that, and I have to just accept this deviation and not apply a measuring scale to success and failure that just is not appropriate to where I am in life right now. So and that failure can be society, right? Expectations from others. So if you sort of remove yourself a little bit from these expectations and other people's definitions of success and failure, that creates also some space for you to try and to say, well, I think trying is already a success, and the learnings from that is more important to me than not taking that risk initially. So yeah, I just wanted to add this.
Yeah, amazing to hear you describe it in that way, because you're absolutely right. Failure is all about perception. Sometimes we put the pressure on ourselves as well, and those are 2 of the chains that I talk about in my 12 chains model. And if we can remove ourselves, that in itself can give us the freedom to explore and say, okay, where are some of these opportunities? What are some of these other things that I could do?
Yeah.
For you, obviously, it's camels. For somebody else, it's water sports, or it's skiing, or it's going and living in Bali, or whatever it may be. It's like giving yourself the space to make that decision, knowing that actually it is just an option for you. There is no right or wrong. There is no necessary success or failure to it. So tell me, where is the school now? What is it that you are doing on the day-to-day? Is it groups? Is it trekking? Is it teaching people how to ride? Is it the racing? What does that look like for you now in the business?
Yeah, so we are now about almost 3 years old. This January will be our 3rd year that we completed. Our main audience is residents and citizens, so people who live in this country, because we want to, as I mentioned, or as the word school indicates, is we want to teach. So that implies that people come repeatedly, and we have a nice group of people that keeps growing, and of people who want to really learn how to ride camels. So that's the majority of that's our day-to-day, basically, riding classes on a daily basis. And then once people came and they've seen sort of the basis, we also, as myself, also my teacher who works with me, we want to understand what are the goals of this individual, and then based on that, we take them along on that journey to enable them to reach these goals. And that could be riding fast and then become part of our race team, or riding long and participate in these treks that we organize and curate in a way. So we've just had a group of 6 of our riders come back from Jordan. They've been traveling in Wadi Rum 100 kilometers in 2 days, which, yeah, they said it was spectacular, traveling in an area where there's no cell phone reception, just you and your camels, no other sign of life, more or less, endless skies. So this remoteness and that kind of escape, facilitated in collaboration, or enabled through an animal as a companion, I think is very powerful, and gives a deeper sense of belonging or understanding of nature, and just a good break to the mind as well, because there's no distractions. There are no again scales that we can compare ourselves to. It's not so important how fast or how slow you are, or you just want to. It's a test of endurance and patience, and that's great. And that's what we do in Oman as well. We have one upcoming trip now in November to an area, or to the inner section of Oman around Adam, which is very relevant actually in history, but is not much known. And then we have the deserts in Oman as well, and hopefully some trips in Saudi in Q1. So the trips, that's a very small fraction, but I definitely want to keep them there, and I want to invest in them, because that's the reason why people learn how to ride in the first place, and it's a nice goal to have. The racing is a bit more of course, a bit more competitive, but not on a very serious level. But it helps. The race is positioned really well in terms of, because it communicates a lot on female inclusion in camel sports, which wasn't really so much the case previously, and it helps us to broaden our, it's a platform for me to communicate about the school and the projects that we have. There's 400 or 500 people who came to watch races last year, and also it's the avenue that I explored in terms of sponsorships. And so for the races, we have corporate sponsors that that are on board, which is in this season is Jeep and the Alain Farms, which is dairy and juices, and Savir Feed. So 2 brands which are more related to the animal side of things, and then Jeep is our what we would say more of a lifestyle partner who shares this passion for adventure that we also have. And sponsorships have helped to be able to subsidize a bit the events, of course, to execute, but also the training. So once you want to race, of course, that requires a bit more time and effort and training. And I didn't want to make that a huge financial burden for my riders and encourage more training. So that's subsidized through sponsorships. And then we do also some fun stuff, like ride with your camel to the coffee shop, ride and have dinner afterwards, so sunset rides, breakfast rides. We go swimming, they go and train at the beach. So lots of different options based on how immersive you want your experience to be, I would say. So it could be a one-time thing to just understand a little bit more camel culture in the UAE. It could be you bringing your visitors who've just come over to see you, and they've never been to see camels up close and have a really personal interaction. And then it could be to be your weekend hobby, or your every Wednesday afternoon ride, until you feel like you're good to go on a trek in that lasts for several days. And so it's a sport, it's a hobby, it's a community, it's a way to connect to local elements of the UAE. And it's been really fun it's also lots of inspiration from our riders actually to create programs, and because they are ambitious.
Nice. And I guess taking that inspiration from the riders, because you built it as a community, you've got that exchange of, what's good, what's bad, what could we improve, what would we like to see. And I think that's, a key thing for anybody listening, thinking about maybe starting their business or trying to grow one, getting that feedback from different groups and being able to incorporate that into the overall offering. So where do you see this going? What is there a long-term goal for you? Is it, build it so that you have the regular treks to different countries? Is it setting up schools in different countries? Have you talked about that with your business partner?
Yes, these are really good thoughts and questions. So it's indeed, so I take inspiration from a few different sports or existing models. So one is, for example, horseback riding holidays. Had seen quite a bit of an uptick, I think, in recent years, where you ride horses around in different countries and based again on local tech. So obviously there's certain local breeds that you won't find somewhere else. It could be in Argentina you find different horses than in Mongolia or in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. So it would be riding, and that's a way to explore that country with local communities and people, local traditions. That could be food, and you get to see the backcountry, because you're traveling with an animal that's not going to take the highway and the fastest road, but it's going to take you through nature and through the valleys and mountains. So, and I see how these itineraries are curated, and I've participated in those too, and I find them really, they're really enriching experiences if the animals are well taken care of. So that's my vision for the travel, is to create camel riding holidays, which gives people an opportunity to explore very indigenous cultures as well, because camels are usually linked to a specific culture, right? So it would be a Bedouin culture here in the Arab Peninsula, but that again distinguishes or differentiates very much between Saudi Arabia, and within Saudi Arabia you have different subcultures within that group. You have Jordanian Bedouins in Wadi Rum, you have Omani Bedouins in Oman, obviously, but also Africa has very rich cultures that are very closely connected to camels. And in India also you have tribes or castes that solely take care of camels. So for the sake of the animal, but for the sake of also connecting to really almost preserved and cultures with their own uniqueness, I think it's a really powerful way of traveling and connecting these, not just as from a surface level, but you really get a deep dive. And these often those communities might not have the tools or the platforms to position themselves in a way that they say, yes, we actually do that all the time, but nobody knows about it, right? We would be happy to host you and take you on a journey through our lands and with our animals, but they wouldn't have the facility to script an itinerary that sounds enticing to someone who sits in Dubai right now, right? So I hope that I can be a bit of that platform that helps surfacing such experiences, and that becomes, relevant and sustainable tourism to certain communities in those often also remote areas. So that's one for travel. And of course, in order to have people travel, you need to build more skills and confidence in riding. So broadening the whole concept of the school is, of course, a big dream as well. Meaning now we have one in Dubai. Now we have riders traveling all the way from Abu Dhabi to attend in our programs here. So if I could have, satellite schools or franchised schools in other Emirates, but also in other countries like Saudi Arabia, which function with the same set of values and so on, I'd be over the moon, right? Because I think it's such a great way to communicate between cultures. And the camel, if we look from an animal welfare point of view, better than a horse, the camel is so much adapted to this climate. So it's more suitable to work and travel by camel here than it would be with a horse. So I encourage that as well from a point of sustainability and animal welfare.
Awesome. Okay, slightly different line of conversation now. In the journey that you've been on over the past couple of years, obviously that corporates, COVID, job, new business, and the school. What's been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I think, and that's maybe more personal in mindset than any environmental points, is to accept this personal change, or that, you know, deviation and development into a certain direction. So for each of these phases that you just mentioned, corporate, there's always an ambition, right? That drives you, that makes you go to work every day. Is you do your job, but also with the ambition to grow. And every time when that growth, you work towards it. But then when you change into that new phase and say, number one, COVID is now interrupting my career. So that was a bit of a feeling of failure, or not being part of the system anymore, and then feel a little bit like an outcast, like not capable to. I lived in a friend's house because I couldn't pay my rent anymore, right? So I felt very, very much that I failed myself almost in succeeding in that chapter of my life, which was corporate, right? And then when I slowly went into that more of this, you know, nature and animals, I felt like now I'm failing entirely on this corporate career thing, because I became a hippie and I'm just in the desert and walking without shoes and looking after camels. And like, how is this? This is not the Linda that came here anymore. Like, I failed the Linda of 2015 that came with ambition and drive and corporate goals. So I struggled to accept that I'm okay with being like that hippie, if you want to say, or that with this deviation. And then and it took me a long time to call that camel school a business, to have a serious conversation that, yeah, it's a business. It generates revenue, it has costs, and there's a P&L, and there's a, you know, there needs to be a solution for accounting and bank accounts. And so it took me a very long time to say, yes, camels and camel riding school is not just this crazy idea in my head, or that is very hard for me to say. You know, imagine you go to a networking event and everyone asks, so what do you do? And then you say, I run a camel riding school. It took me a very long time to take pride in a way in this, or to say it with confidence, no matter what the reaction of the person in that conversation will be. And again, to not see myself as that I'm betraying my former self and my former goals, but it's just a development and evolving into something else. And yeah, I think that you have ups and downs. Sometimes you're really happy with what you do. The other days you are like, what am I doing? This is not going how I set out initially. So to keep basically reaffirming to yourself that changing is not, like you said, failure or betraying your former self. It's an evolving, you as human evolve constantly, and we should embrace, I think, this, because otherwise you are self-sabotaging, and then you're the only one who's your obstacle rather than the environment.
Okay, and finally, just to wrap up, what advice would you give to someone who is currently in a corporate situation, but, you know, has thoughts or dreams of trying to set up their own thing, to grow it, I guess, to potentially move sideways into something different and evolve? What advice would you give them?
Is to start with your dream and build it in, you know, whatever platform where you find your target, your audience, or you have to start. You have to do your proof of concept basically while you are still securely receiving your salary. So it's you want to experiment before, because like I said, use that corporate job as your safety net, but dedicate, like, be serious about making plans to actually let go. So build the brand, build the product, test the product, let it live, right? Like, bring it to life, and grow. Like, you put like a small seed first in a little pot, and you water it, but then when it's ready, you take it and replant it in the outside or whatever. So you have to nurture that dream with actions, not just keep sitting at work and saying, oh, I wish I didn't have to do this meeting or this. No, while you're at work, you are at work. So I don't think we should always want what we don't have. So when we're at work, we should be grateful that we have this job, and it can be the base of where you grow your project. So, and then when is the time to give it a shot. Yeah.